When we hear the term Book of Shadows, many minds instantly conjure images of ancient, mysterious tomes filled with arcane spells, secret rituals, and hidden wisdom. But what exactly is the Book of Shadows? How did it come to be, and why does it hold such a pivotal place in modern witchcraft and occult practice? Today, we embark on a journey to uncover the origins, evolution, and enduring significance of this enigmatic book. What actually is the Book of Shadows? Let's dig deeper. At its core, the Book of Shadows is a magical journal, a deeply personal and sacred manuscript where practitioners of witchcraft record spells, rituals, incantations, and magical knowledge. It is not simply a book of magic, it is a living document, evolving with the witch or coven that maintains it. Unlike ancient grimoires, which were often printed or copied books of standardized spells or instructions for summoning spirits and demons, the Book of Shadows serves both as a guide and a diary. It holds not only the recipes for magical workings but also reflections, experiences, and insights from the witch's own practice. The Book of Shadows thus becomes a uniquely individual artifact, infused with the energy, personality, and path of its owner. While the idea of magical books is ancient, the specific term Book of Shadows and the tradition associated with it is relatively modern, and closely tied to the emergence of Wicca in the mid-20th century. The man most commonly credited with popularizing the Book of Shadows is Gerald Gardner, often regarded as the founder of modern Wicca. Gardner was a British civil servant and occultist who, during the 1940s and early 1950s, claimed to have been initiated into a surviving coven of witches practicing an ancient, nature-based religion. Gardner sought to revive and reconstruct this practice, blending folklore, ceremonial magic, and his own interpretations into what would become the foundation of Wicca. Central to this was the creation of a Book of Shadows, a manuscript Gardner compiled to document rituals, spells, liturgies, and ethical guidelines. This book was meant to serve as the secret manual for covens initiated into his tradition. Gardner's Book of Shadows was heavily influenced by a variety of sources: older magical texts, ceremonial magic rituals, Masonic symbolism, and folklore. But unlike earlier grimoires that often had a more formal, sometimes authoritarian tone, Gardner's Book of Shadows was designed as a practical working guide, accessible to initiates and adaptable for personal use. To understand the Book of Shadows more fully, we must place it in the wider context of magical literature. Historically, magical practitioners used grimoires, books of magic that contained instructions for casting spells, summoning spirits, and invoking supernatural forces. These grimoires, such as the Key of Solomon, the Lesser Key of Solomon, or the Grimoire of Abramelin, were often written in Latin or coded language and passed down through secretive circles. Many of these texts were rigid, containing fixed rituals that the magician was expected to follow precisely. They were often treated as external authorities on magic. The Book of Shadows, by contrast, is more of a hybrid. It inherits the tradition of keeping a magical record but emphasizes personal experience and evolution. It blends the formal elements of a grimoire with the flexibility of a journal. This approach transformed the magical text from a static, one-size-fits-all manual into a living document, one that grows with the practitioner, incorporates personal insights, and reflects the ongoing journey of magical exploration. Indeed, many witches today treat their books of shadows as highly personalized collections, filled not only with spells and rituals but also with notes, sketches, dreams, meditations, and even poetry. It becomes a testament to their spiritual development and relationship with magic. The Book of Shadows holds immense significance both as an individual tool and as a communal artifact. Individually, it acts as a sacred repository. Each witch records their magical workings, successes, and failures, gaining insight into what works and what does not. Over time, this personalized record deepens their understanding and connection to their craft. But the Book of Shadows is not always solitary. In many covens, the organized groups of witches who practice together, the Book of Shadows serves as the shared manual. It standardizes the rituals and beliefs of the group while still allowing room for variation and evolution. Initiates receive the Book of Shadows as part of their initiation, symbolizing their entry into the coven's mysteries. The book thus becomes a symbol of trust, tradition, and continuity. Each coven's Book of Shadows can be unique, often passed down through generations or adapted as new members contribute their knowledge. This collaborative aspect strengthens the social fabric of witchcraft communities, linking past, present, and future practitioners. The Book of Shadows is much more than a simple spellbook. It is a living, breathing document that reflects the heart and soul of modern witchcraft. Born from Gerald Gardner's revival of Wicca, it merges ancient magical traditions with modern sensibilities, blending the formal structure of grimoires with the intimate flexibility of a personal journal. Its role as both a personal diary and a communal text makes it a cornerstone of magical practice, an emblem of tradition, evolution, and personal empowerment in the occult world. As we continue our exploration of the Book of Shadows, we will delve deeper into its contents, how it is used, and the profound impact it has had on contemporary magical traditions. As we move forward in our exploration of the Book of Shadows, the question naturally arises, what exactly fills the pages of this mystical manuscript? What kind of knowledge, wisdom, and instruction does it hold? And how is it structured? The Book of Shadows is not a rigid, fixed text handed down in one form, it is as varied and diverse as the witches who use it. Yet, despite this individuality, there are common threads, typical elements that many books of shadows share. Understanding these typical contents and how they are organized gives us deeper insight into the living tradition that the Book of Shadows embodies. Let's look at some common elements found in the Book of Shadows. At its heart, the Book of Shadows is a compendium of magical knowledge, ritual practice, and spiritual guidance. Among the most commonly included elements are rituals, detailed instructions for performing ceremonial or informal rites. These often include the steps to conduct sacred ceremonies, invoke deities, consecrate tools, and celebrate the Wheel of the Year, the seasonal festival central to many pagan and Wiccan traditions. Spells and incantations, recipes for magical workings designed to influence reality, be it healing, protection, love, prosperity, or divination. These spells may be written in verse, prose, or symbolic language, often accompanied by instructions on timing, materials, and mindset. Invocations and prayers, words and phrases calling upon gods, goddesses, spirits, or elemental forces. These invocations are meant to open communication channels, invite divine presence, and empower magical workings. Correspondences, these are tables or lists linking symbols, colors, herbs, stones, planetary influences, and other natural elements with specific magical purposes or energies. Correspondences help witches select the right tools or ingredients aligned with the intention of a ritual or spell. Ethical guidelines and philosophical teachings, many books of shadows contain reflections on the moral responsibilities of magical practitioners, such as the Wiccan Read, and It Harm None, Do What Ye Will, as well as meditations on the nature of the divine, the self, and the universe. Each practitioner or coven customizes their book, but how? Let's have a look at it. Despite these common elements, no two books of shadows are identical. One of the defining characteristics of the Book of Shadows tradition is its flexibility and adaptability. Each practitioner, or coven, customizes their book to suit their beliefs, experiences, and magical style. Some witches prefer a highly structured book with carefully formatted sections and comprehensive tables of correspondences. Others treat it more like a free-form journal, filled with handwritten notes, sketches, and spontaneous reflections. Covens often maintain a shared Book of Shadows, a collaborative manual passed between members, updated as new teachings or rituals develop. Within these communal books, a tradition's core beliefs and ceremonies are codified, but individual practitioners may also keep their own personal books of shadows for private notes and specialized workings. This diversity reflects the inherently personal nature of witchcraft. Each path is unique, and the Book of Shadows becomes a mirror of that uniqueness. Let's take a closer look at some typical entries you might find within a Book of Shadows, the kinds of pages that bring this magical manual to life. 1. Sabbath celebrations. The Book of Shadows often contains detailed descriptions and rituals for observing the Sabbats, the 8 seasonal festivals that form the wheel of the year in many Wiccan traditions. For example, Samhain, celebrated on October 31st, marking the end of the harvest and honoring ancestors. Beltane, a spring festival of fertility and fire. Yule, the winter solstice celebration of rebirth and light's return. Each Sabbath entry will include historical background, symbolic meanings, ritual scripts, suggested tools, and sometimes recipes for celebratory foods or crafts. 2. Tools and altar setups. Another common feature is detailed guidance on the magical tools used in rituals: the wand, athame, chalice, pentacle, and more. The Book of Shadows may describe how to consecrate and care for each tool, their symbolic meanings and elemental associations. Instructions on setting up the altar, including the placement of tools, candles, crystals, and sacred objects. These entries help practitioners maintain sacred space and connect physically and spiritually with their craft. 3. Herbal lore and magical ingredients. Herbal knowledge is another cornerstone. Many books of shadows include detailed sections on herbs, plants, and natural substances. Magical properties of common herbs like sage, rosemary, mugwort, and lavender. Instructions on harvesting, drying, and preparing herbs. Recipes for incense blends, oils, salves, and potions. This practical botanical wisdom links the witch's craft to the cycles of nature and the healing properties of the earth. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Book of Shadows is the delicate balance it strikes between secrecy and sharing. Historically, occult knowledge was often hidden from the uninitiated, either to protect the power of the magic, maintain exclusivity, or avoid persecution. Gerald Gardner himself emphasized the secrecy of the Book of Shadows, instructing that it should not be shown to outsiders. Yet, Wicca and modern witchcraft also embrace community and teaching. Many covens share their books of shadows with initiates, allowing them to learn and carry forward the tradition. Some practitioners create versions of their books of shadows meant for public consumption, abridged or sanitized copies that share the essence of the craft without revealing closely guarded secrets. Others fiercely guard their personal books of shadows, seeing them as sacred, private records imbued with personal energy and power. This tension between openness and discretion is part of the living dynamic of witchcraft traditions, a dance of trust, protection, and revelation. The Book of Shadows is a rich, layered, and deeply personal repository of magical knowledge. Its contents typically include rituals, spells, invocations, correspondences, and philosophical teachings. Yet the exact structure and content vary widely depending on the practitioner or coven, reflecting their unique spiritual path. Entries often cover everything from Sabbath celebrations to altar setups, herbal lore to ethical guidance, each page a thread in the vibrant tapestry of modern witchcraft. And throughout it all, the Book of Shadows navigates the intricate balance between secrecy and sharing, preserving mystery while fostering community. This dynamic, evolving character is what makes the Book of Shadows not just a book, but a living tradition, carried forward by witches around the world. The Book of Shadows is far more than an inert collection of magical instructions. It is the living heart of a witch's craft, a companion in learning, a witness to spiritual growth, and a bridge between the present practitioner and the traditions of those who walked the path before them. To understand its true role, we must look beyond the ink and paper, and into the way it functions within daily and ceremonial magic, how it shapes the practitioner's journey, and why it remains so deeply personal and powerful. In its most direct role, the Book of Shadows is a practical manual, a ready reference for rituals, spells, correspondences, and invocations. When a practitioner prepares for a Sabbath celebration, a moon ritual, or a working for healing or protection, they turn to their Book of Shadows for guidance. Every element of the craft, from the arrangement of an altar to the timing of a spell, can be found here, allowing the witch to follow well-tested steps and refine their technique. But unlike a purely instructional manual, the Book of Shadows also functions as a spiritual diary. It records personal experiences. How a spell unfolded. How a ritual felt. What omens or dreams followed. In this way, it becomes a mirror, reflecting the witch's own spiritual evolution. Over time, these pages form a rich chronicle, one part sacred textbook, one part autobiography of the soul. The Book of Shadows is integral to ritual practice, acting as both a script and a teacher. When performing a ceremony, whether alone or with a coven, the witch can follow the carefully crafted words and steps written within. This provides structure, ensuring that the ritual flows smoothly and retains its symbolic power. For beginners, the Book of Shadows is like a patient mentor. The early entries may contain copied rituals from teachers or coven leaders, providing a solid foundation. As the practitioner gains experience, they may annotate these rituals with observations. Which chants felt more resonant, which offerings seemed more effective, or how to adapt a rite for different seasons or circumstances. For experienced witches, the Book of Shadows becomes a record of innovation. They may create entirely new rites, test them in practice, and refine them based on results, a process of continuous magical research and development. In both cases, the Book of Shadows ensures that no insight is lost, and that each new ritual builds upon the wisdom of the past. One of the defining strengths of the Book of Shadows is that it is never truly finished. From the moment it is begun, it grows alongside the practitioner. New spells are added, old ones revised. Observations from meditations, dreams, and divinations find their way into the margins. Pages are decorated with sketches of sacred symbols, pressed herbs, or diagrams of altar layouts. This personalization is not just aesthetic, it deepens the magical connection between the witch and their book. Every note, drawing, and amendment infuses the Book of Shadows with the practitioner's own energy. Over the years, it becomes attuned to its owner in the same way a well-used ritual tool does. In coven settings, personalization may take the form of a shared evolution. Members contribute new rituals, refine shared practices, and document the group's magical history. This ensures that the Coven's Book of Shadows remains alive, relevant, and representative of its current members while honoring its roots. Beyond its practical uses, the Book of Shadows holds a deeper, almost sacred role. It is a link to magical heritage. In many traditions, especially in Wicca, a practitioner receives a Book of Shadows upon initiation. This book may be a direct copy, sometimes handwritten, of their initiator's own book, which in turn is a copy of their teacher's, and so on, tracing an unbroken line back to the earliest days of the tradition. This creates a tangible connection to a magical lineage, allowing the practitioner to stand in continuity with generations of witches who have worked with the same words, symbols, and spells. For solitary witches, the connection to tradition may come through inherited grimoires, public ritual texts, or the adaptation of historical magical writings. Even then, the Book of Shadows acts as a bridge between the personal present and the collective past, grounding the witch's work in a wider spiritual story. The Book of Shadows is a multifaceted companion. It is a manual, guiding the hands and mind through the mechanics of magic. It is a diary, recording the inner and outer journey of the practitioner. It is a canvas, personalized with the living energy of its owner. And it is a link, binding each witch to the deep currents of tradition that flow through the craft. Whether tucked away in a locked chest, displayed proudly on an altar, or held in the heart of a coven's shared practice, the Book of Shadows is more than just a book. It is the soul of a witch's magical life, captured in ink, paper, and spirit. The Book of Shadows is often thought of as a singular, definitive text, a sacred grimoire that defines the practice of witchcraft. But in reality, it is a concept rich with diversity and constant evolution. As witchcraft and pagan traditions have spread and multiplied, the Book of Shadows has taken many forms, reflecting the beliefs, histories, and innovations of different traditions and practitioners. This section explores how the Book of Shadows varies between prominent traditions, adapts to the digital age, and extends beyond Wicca into the broader neo-pagan and magical landscape. When we look at the Book of Shadows within Wicca, the two oldest and most influential traditions, Gardnerian and Alexandrian Wicca, provide a fascinating study in contrasts and continuities. Gardnerian Wicca, as the origin point for the modern Book of Shadows, Gerald Gardner's version laid the foundation. His Book of Shadows is heavily ceremonial, structured, and secretive. It contains carefully scripted rituals, prayers, and the ethical code of the Wiccan Rede. Gardner's book was traditionally handwritten, and copies were closely guarded, passed only to initiated members. Its tone is formal, blending folkloric magic with elements borrowed from Masonic and ceremonial occultism. Alexandrian Wicca, founded in the 1960s by Alex Sanders, Alexandrian Wicca built on Gardnerian roots but introduced new elements, including a greater emphasis on ceremonial magic and Kabbalistic influences. The Alexandrian Book of Shadows reflects this with more complex ritual structures and additional magical techniques. It is often considered more eclectic and experimental than its Gardnerian counterpart, though it maintains the core ethical and ritual framework. Eclectic Wicca and solitary practitioners, beyond these traditional covens, many modern witches identify as eclectic or solitary. For them, the Book of Shadows becomes highly personalized, often a patchwork of rituals drawn from various sources, Wiccan, shamanic, folk magic, Hermeticism, or other paths. These practitioners write their own books of shadows, freely adapting or inventing rituals and spells that resonate personally. The structure here can range from a digital document to a handmade journal filled with art, poetry, and mixed media. As we have entered the digital age, the Book of Shadows has transformed once again. Many modern witches now keep digital books of shadows, documents, PDFs, blogs, or private websites where their magical knowledge is stored. This offers several advantages: ease of updating, searching for specific information, backing up precious data, and incorporating multimedia elements like images, audio, or video tutorials. Online communities and forums also share books of shadows or parts of them, fostering collective learning and dialogue across geographic and cultural boundaries. This accessibility, however, raises questions about privacy and secrecy, concepts deeply embedded in traditional witchcraft. Some practitioners worry that making the Book of Shadows public or too easily accessible dilutes its power or violates the sacred trust of initiation. Others embrace the democratization of magical knowledge, seeing it as a natural evolution that spreads wisdom and empowers solitary witches everywhere. Either way, digital books of shadows reflect the changing nature of magic in the 21st century, fluid, connected, and hybrid. While the Book of Shadows is most closely associated with Wicca, its essential concept, a personal or group magical journal, resonates across many neo-pagan and magical traditions. Traditional witchcraft. Some traditional witchcraft groups maintain their own secret manuscripts or journals that resemble the Book of Shadows, though often under different names and with differing emphases on folk magic or local lore. Thelema and Hermetic traditions. Practitioners of Thelema or Hermetic magic sometimes keep similar records of their workings, rituals, and spiritual insights. While not typically called books of shadows, these journals serve comparable purposes, tracking magical development and preserving lineage. Neo-Druidry. Modern Druids may keep notebooks or journals of seasonal ceremonies, meditations, and nature lore, blending personal spirituality with ritual practice. In all these paths, the spirit of the Book of Shadows, a living record of magical and spiritual experience, endures. It serves as both a practical tool and a symbol of commitment to one's path. Let's look at how the modern practitioners blend ancient wisdom with new insights. Modern witches and magicians often stand at a fascinating crossroads, blending the ancient and the modern, the traditional and the experimental. In their books of shadows, you will find this fusion vividly alive. Ancient recipes for herbal magic coexisting with cutting-edge energy healing techniques. Rituals inspired by pre-Christian pagan festivals alongside invocations of gods from many pantheons, Greek, Egyptian, Norse, and beyond. Ethical reflections grounded in traditional Wiccan read alongside contemporary values of environmentalism, feminism, and social justice. Handwritten grimoire pages side by side with digital bookmarks and hyperlinks to online resources. This syncretism is part of what keeps the Book of Shadows relevant today. It is not a museum piece but a dynamic document, continually reshaped to meet the needs, beliefs, and insights of new generations. The Book of Shadows is a living tradition defined by its variability and adaptability. From the carefully guarded, formal tomes of Gardnerian and Alexandrian covens to the fluid, eclectic journals of solitary practitioners, from handwritten manuscripts to digital archives, the Book of Shadows evolves alongside the craft itself. Its influence extends beyond Wicca, inspiring similar practices across a spectrum of neo-pagan and magical paths, each blending ancient wisdom with contemporary innovation. In the end, the Book of Shadows remains a testament to the enduring human desire to record, connect, and deepen the sacred journey, whether through ink and parchment or pixels and code. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Book Therapy now.